Hello everyone, welcome to my presentation. I'm here to talk to you today about the Barnegat Bay, which is located along the Jersey Shore, and specifically how we can help restore the water quality of this watershed. My name is Kellyanne Ohlinger. What is Barnegat Bay? To start, Barnegat Bay is an estuary that lies along and covers more than 42 miles of the Jersey Shore. Because of its uniqueness, there are many different habitats that are within the bay. Some of these habitats include beaches, wetlands, dunes, and marshes. It is also home to various species including fish, oysters, mussels, clams, and other marine life. Within the last couple of years, pollution rates in the bay have been steadily increasing. The main cause of this would be the nitrogen levels in the bay, and because of this, the bay and its marine health is declining. It is a shame to see this because the Barnegat Bay is an icon for so many people that come to the Jersey Shore due to its food source and it being a tourist attraction. Overall, the bay brings in about $4.3 billion in revenue per year, with about $2.3 billion in recreational activities and $2 billion in employment. However, this is just a statistic. I believe that the actual economic value is much higher. Because the bay is in such a great location for water sports and summer fun, the population doubles in the summer months to 500,000 people. Just having the tourists come in and rent out houses and buy various goods at local shops puts more money back into the local community. It is for these reasons that we should look into restoring the water quality of the bay and promote a healthier marine and human life. These pictures side by side show the decline of the bay. On the left you can see much more greenery and less residential development, while on the right you can see more brown, more buildings, and less beaches. As I said before, the biggest concern right now within the Barnegat Bay is the exponential levels of nitrogen in the water. Now, the nitrogen levels affect not only the marine life but also human life as well. Nitrogen gets into the water through fertilizers, pet waste, and suburban runoff, and because of this, the amounts have doubled since 1995. As of 2014, the USGS reports that there was approximately 749,000 kilograms of nitrogen in the bay. There's even more nitrogen in the bay than they used to farm the famous Jersey summer corn. Now, Governor Chris Christie has passed legislation A 2404 requiring fertilizers to only have a certain amount of nitrogen per bag, and a large majority of it must be slow release, which is better for the environment. And with the steady increase of residential development, the forest buffers that used to soak up the nitrogen before it reached the bay are no longer prevalent. It is also important to note that any advancements being done on the bay are geared more towards the future of the bay. My plan would focus on restoring the current water quality of the bay and getting these high nitrogen amounts out of the water. One of the biggest reasons we notice the rising amounts of nitrogen is because with the nitrogen comes harmful jellyfish and algae that thrive in those conditions. This is especially bad for marine life. According to St. John's Water Management District, these blooms can release toxins into the water. In high concentrations, they are very harmful to various species. They also can combine to create a layer across the top of the water and block sunlight from reaching the bottom of the bay. They also deplete the dissolved oxygen levels that the fish rely on. Now, marine life is not the only concern when it comes to toxic levels. A study done through the Great Lakes shows that there is a correlation between cyanobacteria toxins, which can be found in the algae, and human health, and especially since the Barnegat Bay is a prime water sports location. Now, the toxins can be directly absorbed through the skin or accidentally swallowed. The jellyfish also sting people who swim in the bay. Even though there is no correlation between major health effects and these stings, it is obviously an uncomfortable side effect of enjoying a day on the water. Until the nitrogen is flushed out, the jellyfish and algae will remain. The Barnegat Bay also used to be a hub for fishing ports. Generations of baymen supported their local families on the bay's abundance. Local business owners used to be able to just rake the floor of the bay and pull up hundreds of clams. Now, the bay is physically unable to provide any source of food for local baymen. Now, this is not because of overharvesting, but because the marine life is not able to provide such a large population due to the toxic environment. Shown here is a layout of all of the best spots to find local fish. Unfortunately, some of these spots are in major decline due to the pollution of nitrogen. For my first model, I chose to focus on the Philippines fish farming. This model focused on the effect of water quality in Balanao, Philippines, by introducing mass amounts of fish pens on already stressed water. The study first starts with an introduction to the algal bloom that happens in 2012 that killed a large majority of the fish population. Days before the bloom, the dissolved oxygen levels were less than 2 milligrams per liter, which is dangerously unhealthy for the fish. The addition of the fish pens in coastal waters were part of the food requirements set by the government in response to the growing population. Because of this, they introduced large-scale fish farms. Before this, the water was already considered to be a stressful environment, and the farms certainly did not help. Within 10 years, amounts of nitrite increased by 35%, nitrate by 90%, and phosphate by 67%. These three chemicals are also seem to be triggering the decline of the Barnegat Bay as well. There is also a significant decrease in tidal movement in the water due to the fish pens by increase of fractional drag, thereby affecting the water resident time or flushing rates. From this model, we should conclude that introducing large amounts of fish farming is not ideal. Fish need to be slowly introduced into the environment to prevent the detrimental influx of the colonies. For my second model, I chose to focus on the Chesapeake Bay, which is also located in New Jersey. The Chesapeake Bay is facing the same pollution issues in terms of nitrogen levels and the decline of marine life and water quality. Because the Chesapeake Bay has a similar ecosystem to the Barnegat Bay, it provides a good reference to see their current strategies to fight pollution and restore their ecosystems. Also, this model has been in movement now for about a decade, so the results are starting to arise and prove that it's a good model to base the restoration of the Barnegat Bay after. One of the first steps that they did was to restore the ecosystems. Re-establishing colonies and preventing fishing and farming would allow the organisms to have time to thrive in the bay and get their population numbers back up to where they used to be. So far, 6 different species of oysters are being established. For this submodel, the Chesapeake Bay Protection is reaching out towards other states such as Virginia and Maine to ensure that the colonies are being established in a stable way. Once the seeding is complete, they will be monitored in 3 and 6-year increments to determine if they meet the standards for colony success. Another part of their plan was to open the dams. The benefit of this would allow the fish swimming through the bay to move the water around. A reason why the chemicals are collecting in such toxic amounts is because the water is still and there is nothing to flush the chemicals out towards the ocean. The Chesapeake Bay has seen more movement of sediment in the water by allowing species such as shad and herring to move between saltwater and freshwater, and naturally reaching their spawning grounds. Also, by allowing them to reach these grounds, the fish can naturally promote a larger population. This provides a successful alternative to restore the population versus the Philippines fish farming, where they saw a decrease in water health. The third part of their plan was to restore the forest barriers along the bay. The forests that used to soak up some of the chemicals are no longer there, and therefore there is nothing stopping the chemicals from running into the water. The Chesapeake's forest buffer program is behind on schedule. They have been able to introduce colonies of grasses that provide food and shelter to fish and wildlife, add oxygen to the water, and absorb nutrient pollution, but in terms of buffers as a whole, they still have more to go. This is probably one of the toughest sections to achieve because planting the buffers is easy, but maintaining them until they are able to be self-sustaining is where it might need some time. They are also requiring an extra 2 million acres be conserved to protect the status of the current wildlife and prevent the surge of residential development that is happening. As for the overall result of this, you can see in the chart above there has been a significant decrease in nitrogen levels since 1985. The dotted line represents the goal for the end of 2017, and the solid line represents the ideal goal for 2025, which would be the projected date of this model. The end goal amount of nitrogen was determined by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to achieve standards necessary for clean water and a stable aquatic habitat. Other statistics to be aware of were the marine organisms living at the bottom of the bay. Their inability to move due to environmental stress is an indicator of water quality. The health of the bottom dwelling community improved, with 62% of the community meeting restoration goals compared with the 59% in 2014, and the extent of degraded conditions was the lowest it has been since monitoring began in 1996. Overall, this model is probably the most informative in terms of what methods would work, even though a few tweaks would be needed to be made to tailor to the Barnegat Bay. The status of the project has seen some declines from year to year, but overall they are still on track to meet their goals. The Stanford experiment model provides a win-win situation for the oyster, clam, and mussel populations and the water quality of the bay. In a Stanford study published in Environmental Science and Technology, some species of bivalves, such as oysters and clams, are capable of filtering water and removing the toxins. Because they are natural filter feeders, they filter the water for microplankton and other food sources. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and other CECs in the water get filtered as well. Researchers subjected native California floater mussels and invasive Asian clams to treated wastewater with various concentrations of CECs. Within 72 hours, the clams and mussels had removed up to 80% of the chemicals. Each native mussel filters about 2 liters of water a day, so it doesn't take a whole lot to improve the water quality. There is still little research done on how to specifically introduce these organisms in such a large scale without doing damage as in the Philippines fish farm, but because these are native species, it might be less of a detriment. This study was published in 2014 and correlates well with an already established organization titled Reclaim the Bay. Reclaim the Bay was not started in response to the studies showing that shellfish have the capability of filtering out CECs, but it is just an added benefit. Their main goal was to raise awareness of the shellfish population and take action to raise these populations. As of right now, this organization is volunteer only, but if we could fund their program, we could have year-round awareness and promotion for marine life. The Barcelona Harbor is another model that can be used to reference the Barnegat Bay. In this study, researchers identified significant amounts of toxins in the harbor, but concluded that these amounts were less around the openings. This is because there is more mixing of the water, and the toxins are not stagnant in one location. The mixing also allows the toxins to be flushed out into a larger water source. This may not be the most ideal solution because it does not actually get rid of the toxins. However, it allows them to be diluted into larger water sources. They also reference that wind is a big factor in mixing water located in the middle of the harbor. However, they note that it depends on the wind conditions and only provides somewhat of a solution. Nonetheless, this model is great to reference in terms of the correlation between water quality and using mixing methods to prevent toxins from clustering. As shown in the success of the Chesapeake Bay, the fish passageways provide natural water movement. There are 3 dams specifically that should open at Kettle, Mill, and Tuggerton Creeks. Various fish and eels would be able to travel through those creeks and into the bay, providing a mixing and new spawning grounds for future colonies. But because the bay only has one outlet located at the southernmost region by Little Lake Harbor, the opening of the dams provide another route to flush some of the toxins out. The stars on the map show where the 3 creeks are located, with Kettle Creek being the most northern point, Mill Creek in the middle, and Tuggerton at the most southern point. Restoring forest barriers will probably be the hardest part of the plan. Like I mentioned before, residential development has been overwhelming, and because of this, conserved land is becoming less prevalent. Planting buffers can be relatively easy, but the wildlife that we incorporate into these buffers needs to thrive long after we've planted it. By only using native species along the shore and restoring at least 50% of the watershed's barrier, we have the best chance for success. Depending on the level of water and sunlight the areas get, a few examples of trees planted could be buttonbush, eastern red cedar, and sweet bay magnolia. The final step I would like to impose is to turn Reclaim the Bay into an organization with full-time employees. As of right now, the organization is volunteer only, but the problem with that is they can only implement so many shellfish into the bay under volunteer hours. By allowing employees to be full-time, we can have a year-round organization dedicated to establishing the shellfish population and for the future provide awareness by having activities at the spawning sites. The shellfish colonies that would be established have proven through research that they have some chemical filtration, and that should help with the existing nitrogen levels. In terms of price, I have split up the costs into two different categories. One-time costs would be the construction to break down the dams, establishing the marine life colonies inside the bay, and planting the forest buffers along the coast, which would total to approximately $75,000. For yearly costs, I would like to implement paying employees under the Reclaim the Bay organization, which would approximate $125,000, totaling $200,000. If anyone has any questions or would like further information on my plan, please feel free to email me at kellyanneohlinger@yahoo.com. Thank you for your time and have a good day.